Welcome to the Thoroughly Wrong Project with Lalo and Bob. We appreciate you spending some time with us today. Let's jump right into that weekly dose of things you can disagree with. Take it away, guys.
All right. Good morning and welcome to the Thoroughly Wrong Project. I'm your co-host Bob, and this is my other co-host Lalo, and I think I got that down right now, Lalo. I think everything's going to be okay, brother.
Practice
How you doing?
makes perfect.
Yeah, I guess. This is number 33, I think. 32 or 33. Anyway, how you doing this morning?
Pretty good.
How's that Thanksgiving week?
It was good. Well, my parents went out of town, so they kind of just left us. They went to Vegas. We're actually coming back today.
You poor children. My goodness.
So I just went to my girlfriend's parents' house, and then my brother went with my cousins, and then my little sister had to work on Thanksgiving. So thank you, capitalism.
Yeah. Again. Well, some people are going to have to work on Thanksgiving. Now, you can't shut the country down so people can gorge themselves on food. That's not... I guess you can make more people work and everybody works a half day. Would that be fair?
Well, I mean, she got off early. They closed at 6. So, I mean, I guess that's not too bad, but at the same time, you could have just closed the whole day.
It is, but you got that most people eat at Thanksgiving meal between 2 and 3, so you had to wait.
See, that's
on.
Something weird that I've always thought, because to me, dinner's like why is that a thing? Like, why do you eat so early?
I don't know.
You don't eat dinner that early any other day of the week. You'd think a day where there's a lot more cooking involved, you'd eat later, if anything.
Yeah.
And I'm always used to eating later in the day. Even on Thanksgiving, my family. So I remember this year at my girlfriend's house, they ate at 12. I was like,
holy shit.
What the hell? But I mean,
Thanksgiving
even
lunch.
Yeah, but I mean, even 2 or 3, that's still hella early for me.
Well, at my dad's house, everybody got up early to start cooking. They start cooking at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and then they have brunch around 10, and then everybody eats at 2. So that was my experience, even at my mom and dad. And my mom's house is about the same. So isn't that weird that modern families at my mom's house and at my dad's house? It's always been that way for me. But this year I didn't do anything. I made my wife stuffing and some mashed potatoes, and then I made beef and broccoli with tofu instead of beef. That was basically it.
It was just tofu and broccoli.
Yeah, tofu, mushrooms, broccoli, and then
I don't think you could call it beef and broccoli if there's no actual beef in it.
Well, technically, it's vegan beef and broccoli, but you're right, it is tofu and broccoli, but that doesn't make any sense to somebody's not a vegan. God, I've been a vegan for so fucking long.
Beef and broccoli doesn't make any sense if it's tofu.
All right, I made tofu and broccoli with the beef and broccoli sauce. How about that?
I think people just don't want to say beef or tofu and broccoli because that's an immediate I'll pass. I'll skip that dish.
I know, but see, there's a problem. When you're a vegan, everybody's on your ass. It's like, oh, we know you're a vegan because you always talk about it. Well, what'd you have for lunch? Tofu and broccoli. See? You always talk about it. Well, you fucking ask me, It's like my son said he goes, you won't last 6 months as a vegan. I think I'm a vegan just for spite, just because he said that.
Going strong. 20 years later.
It's 5. It's 5, and he mentions it every now and then. He's like, you're such a stubborn motherfucker. I'm like, yeah, well, you told me I couldn't. That's the best way to get me to do something. Tell me I can't, and I'll fucking do it just to spite you. God.
That's usually good driving force for a lot of people.
Yeah, spite. Isn't that terrible? The way we are. It is. It's like you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. Oh yeah, well fucking watch me. I know. I know. I'm going. I'm going up to shoot my gun today. After this, going up way up in the mountains. So I'm gonna go exercise my Second Amendment rights today. I'm excited.
Where do you
Silence on the other end. Fucking gun nut.
do you have like a special like spot or something?
Uh,
Because I've heard people talk about like they'll go somewhere where it's like a out in the open like shooting range,
yeah.
like an actual place you go. And then I've heard people just like go out in some fucking field and just shoot there.
Well, you know, as you're going towards the canyon out on 78 or 178,
Yeah.
yeah, when you drop down the hill and there's those orange trees, the orchards on the both sides, there's a road there. I can't remember the name. I think it's called Rancheria Road. Rancheria, I don't know. Anyway, it winds up into the backside of the mountains, and it's like spider webs and up there. So I just find a place with a good background, like a high hill, and just shoot into that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
because
safe.
I've always wanted to go, but I just never like actually plan it out, I guess.
Yeah. Well, this is the first time. This will be the first time I've shot a gun in. I'm going to say about 25 years.
I've
So
never actually shot a gun.
really,
I have like a air like rifle type of thing,
yeah.
but like a gun, I've never actually shot one.
All right.
I
Well,
keep telling our old coworker or your old coworker, I guess,
yeah,
buddy, because I know
yeah.
he has a few guns that we should go. But like I said, we never actually like make the plan. We're just all talk, I guess.
That's pretty much Buddy.
Well, he goes because I've
Well,
seen him do it.
he never
Yeah.
invited me. He always said, "Hey, man, let's go, let's go, let's go." I'm like, "Okay, call me." No, nothing. So,
Well, I know he does a lot of stuff with like his kids, so
yeah.
I get that.
Well, I could say that. That's how Buddy is. But I could say that because Buddy says he'll listen to this and he never does. So I can say whatever I want about Buddy and he'll never know. It's like talking about the Quakers. They don't fucking know. Oh man. Hey dude, I was on a podcast this week and I'm interviewing for another one today after this podcast. It was pretty
What was it
nice. I mean,
about?
well, that one was about wellness for the 18 to 30-year-olds, and the guy invited me on because he said he wanted another viewpoint, and I got to talk about Thoroughly Wrong a lot.
What was that? What the episode was about, or is that what the overall like theme of the
The
podcast
overall
is?
theme of the podcast is wellness, and I talked a lot about what happened after my accident and exercise and diet. I call myself an amateur expert, which after 7 years of doing this shit, that's kind of fucking an amateur expert anyway. I don't have a degree or anything, but 7 years of trial and error makes you pretty good at something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like kind of like marriage. I'm an amateur expert at that too.
I don't think people would like. I don't think that's a thing you would want to be an amateur expert on. Like, oh yeah, I've done tons of them. Don't worry, I know what I'm talking about.
I know what I'm doing. I'm on number 4, man. It's all good.
How'd it go
Yeah.
though?
It went actually really well because he wanted to talk about discipline and where you get that and how to get started, and we talked a lot about childhood trauma and overcoming childhood trauma and forgiveness and my car accident and getting better from that, shit like that. So it was really good. And then at the end, he let me talk about this podcast, which was really cool of him. And I told him the dynamic that you and I have, like generational thing, and he was really interested in it. So he's plugging our podcast on his today. I think he has like 10,000 listeners.
Oh, damn.
And then he let me plug my book. He said, what else, and I told him I have a book on meditation. And as soon as like within 2 hours, I had like 16 downloads of my book. So things are looking
Well,
up.
I can imagine that would like appeal to the audience,
Yeah.
like
And
wellness and all that stuff.
yeah, today I'm on another one called, that one was called Improvement. And this one and today that I'm doing for is called Not So High School, Not So Musical, which is another one. It's about 18 to 24-year-olds for the same thing. So
It's for wellness too.
yeah, for wellness of getting out of high school.
What is it called?
High School, Not So Musical.
Where do people come up with these names? They're so like, I would never think of like a lot of these like podcast names. It's crazy.
Well, Thoroughly Wrong
pretty
Project. Cool. That's a good one.
Yeah, but like, see, I would have never thought of that on my own.
That's cool. I'm doing it, dude. I'm doing this because I'm trying to plug our podcast. I'm trying to get us more listeners. So, what the fuck? I was thinking the other day, I was like, if this fucking 25-year-old kid can get 10,000 viewers or listeners, why not? Why can't we? So I've been going on podcasts. I've been signing up for all these fucking sites and doing all this shit and getting us out there. And it's actually starting to work. So we might be famous.
That's actually been my real goal from the beginning.
Okay.
I just never told you.
Is it?
No.
Why did you fucking tell me? Like, I've been working behind the scenes to bring us down, man.
Nah. I've always just been more of the like I enjoy like the conversation, and I feel like it's a very good like in general, I think it's very good to like kind of talk about your like mindset and your ideas and whatever's on your mind like out loud.
Yeah.
And kind of get like some feedback on it or like what other people think about it. I think it's like beneficial for for like a person to just kind of hear them like out loud.
Yeah, I think we all need to communicate
like
more. If we had our ideas out there more, and I don't mean our prejudices and our biases and our hate and our racism, that seems to be the fucking thing that everybody wants to spout about now. But if we sat down and talked about wellness and meditation and how to, be better people, I think it would be a better culture. But I don't think we've ever done that. I think it's a pipe dream that people talk about all this shit. I have a lot of people on Facebook, the wellness people, and they seem to spout off all the time about how things used to be better. And I don't really see it's ever happened, because all throughout my life, if you look at, we've always been at war, there's always been racism, there's always been sexism. It seems to be getting better in some areas and worse in others. And that seems to be the flow of culture. It's just, I don't know if we'll ever come to this point where we're all just zen and happy. I don't think everybody's like that.
Yeah, I mean, people that usually talk about the old days, the good old days, chances are they weren't really impacted by any of the negative things that were happening on back then.
Right.
You're not going to hear a black person talk about, man, I wish we could go back to the 60s when things were cool.
Yeah, when they used dogs and fire hoses on us. That's the good old days.
Or like I always see this comment on like threads when it's like something about like gas prices or anything that's going on right now since like Joe Biden took over.
Yeah.
Like if it's something bad like inflation or whatever. And it's always like, man, I could sure use some mean tweets right now. referring to like, I'd rather have Donald Trump in office and have him tweet
Yeah,
stupid shit.
like it was good back when he was in office.
Yeah. But it's like I said, like those people, and then like I'll click on their profile and it's like some white dude. And I'm like, shocker, you know?
Well, apparently a lot of the Hispanic community likes him too. That's on you,
Yeah,
man.
he appeals. I mean, I don't think it's on me.
No, it's all on you. You're
He appeals
Hispanic.
to
It's
like
all your
the
fault.
but see, here's the thing. He like that portion of like Hispanic support that he gets is usually from like second or third like generation
Right?
people that live here. And I mean, like I think part of Hispanic culture has always been like working hard and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's a very like have you ever heard of the term like machismo?
Yeah, muchísimo. Sorry.
Yeah. Like I think that's what plays into it because it's very like, oh, like I'm a man, like I'm gonna, you know, I'm in control, blah blah, like that, just like douchebaggy type of mentality.
Yeah.
And I mean that's pretty much what like Trumpism is,
But I know I grew up in the Southwest and I've lived in California for over 25 years now. So you got to think I spent a lot of time in South Tucson, a lot of time in Mexico, a lot of time in Phoenix, LA. So all my life I've been immersed in the Hispanic community. And I noticed that a lot of those fucking machismo with their chests out, everything, their mom or their wife is in charge.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
That's
But I
pretty
mean,
fucking funny.
that I don't know, like that culture is just very like toxic.
Yeah.
Because I mean that's where you get like the whole like oh, you're my wife, like I own you, like you need to listen to me, like dinner should be ready by the time I get home every night type of thing.
Yeah.
Like that type of attitude just like emphasizes that, like those type of beliefs.
Yeah, there's a very bonded community too. They're very,
Yeah.
yeah, they're very, you know, now you said that, it just popped up in my head. You remind me that that's very much like Appalachia. It's the same fucking thing where the guy, I have this fucking, I was at a family reunion, maybe Christmas, the last time I was living in West Virginia, and one of the men in my family was sitting next to the fucking cake. His wife was in the other room and he's like, "Hey, come here." And she walks in the room. He goes, "Give me a piece of cake." And I've never forgotten that. I'm like, I said, "Dude, you're sitting next to the cake." He's like, "Yeah, but it's not for me to get it for me." Okay. Why? And it caused this big silence in the room where it just seems like, why the hell would you do that? But I have seen the servitude of women in Appalachia is equivalent to the servitude of women in the Hispanic culture.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of things in like in just culture in general that we're just so like used to seeing that we don't even like give it a second thought until like, wait, why is this like a thing?
Yeah, why are you sitting next to the cake asking for a piece of it?
And it's like if we actually like took a step back and like thought about it, like we would see that it kind of like it makes little to like no sense, most of these things. Like I remember I was talking to someone last night about it was like on Instagram, some like post about like healthcare.
Yeah.
And someone said like, oh, well, if we had like universal healthcare, this wouldn't be an issue. And then like some dude like went off on him talking about like, I don't want handouts. Like people should work for their things.
Right. Oh,
And
of
it's
course.
like, I tell him like, why should your employer provide you with healthcare then? Shouldn't you pay for your own healthcare? Like, isn't that the same thing? Like Like if you're into working for all your things, why don't you just, work at your job and then pay for your own healthcare? Why are you taking the handout of your employer giving you healthcare? And he's like, oh, well, that's not the same thing
Exactly.
as the government giving you healthcare. I was like, it kind of is. Like we pay taxes, like we fund the government. The government should work for us and, use that money in ways that benefits us the most. Um,
I
and then I
think
told him, like, don't you think it's weird that employers are in charge of our healthcare? Like, why is that like part of our system? Like, why should your employer pay for your healthcare? Like, just the thought of that, like, why? Like, why is that a thing?
right.
And I don't think people ever like think about it all that much. Like, hey, do you have healthcare? Like, oh no, like my job doesn't provide it or whatever. And it's like, why is it their job to provide it in the first place?
The thing that we need to learn as a culture, and I think that we don't in any way, shape, or form, unless you go to college and concentrate on the humanities. If you go to college and concentrate on the business, you don't get it. But we need to work on critical thinking. And when I went to college, I was a psychology major, and then I switched over to philosophy when I was at Cal State, and I studied philosophy for 3 years and logic and critical thinking and critical reasoning and philosophy, all kinds of all kinds of different stuff. And it did cause me to sit back and instead of the thing about Hispanic culture and Appalachian culture is if you're born into that culture, that's what you see, that's what you do without questioning it. Because, and then if you ask the guy, why do you treat your wife like that? Well, that's the way my dad did, and that's the way it's always been for as long as I can remember. So if you stop them and you say, yeah, but why? They don't have the faculties, they don't have the tools in their little mental toolbox to deconstruct what they're doing. The only answer is that's what my dad did, or that's what my mom did, and that's what I'm doing. But as we get more and more, I know a lot of Hispanic girls in your age range, like when I worked at the county, um, they say, I'm not marrying into that. And their parents, their mom is like, you have to, and there's this pushback against them. But that critical analysis of what they did is like, it's always been like that. Why should I push myself into servitude when I have this critical thinking that that's not the way I want to be? So it is changing, but like it's so fucking slow because I still see a lot of guys your age who are being waited on hand and foot by their mom, and they're just waiting for the Hispanic woman to come along to take her place.
Yeah. And I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, I mean, a lot of them, like I said, are like first or second or third generation.
Yeah.
So like when their parents grew up, even if they didn't want that, like that was all that was around them.
Yeah.
But I think when you take that, those family units and you bring them over here and, all these like little girls and boys like growing up, they see like, oh, like that's not like, it doesn't have to be that way. Like you could see like here in the United States, it's not, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like there's, places here and there where that's like the norm, but
Sure.
it's pretty obvious to see like that's not like universal here. So they see like, oh, I can just not do it. Like that's an option that I have.
I could just not
Um,
do it. And then that seems horrific to their parents. Like, what do you mean you're just not going to do it?
right. So it's like, I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing that big like change, because a lot of people are just like looking, you know, at the world and just be like, oh, like I don't have to do that. Like I don't want to live like that. And I have the option to not live like that. So I'm just not going to do it.
The shifts in culture are slow. Like racism is, you know, eh, I don't think racism will ever go away. I think it's always been. I think it just changes forms, and the misogyny is the same way. And I sometimes wonder if those power structures are almost, and please, good God, don't take me wrong here. I'm not what I'm about to say. I wonder sometimes if they're so entrenched in our culture that they're a part of, almost a part of our humanness, to the way we treat each other, because we always fucking have. Since, you're talking about how many thousands of years ago, at when the Egyptians were in charge, they enslaved the Jews. There's always been this power struggle for the very powerful to use the not powerful. And today we have the 2% who own most of everything controlling us down at the bottom. We're almost slaves to this in a way.
No, but yeah, I mean, we just, it's like one of those things where we have to like kind of hyper analyze like our lifestyle, because like I said, we just so, I don't even know what the word is, like used to it. Like it's just part of us that we think it's like the best way, like things could actually work,
Yeah.
when in reality, if you actually like break it down, like, hey, let's find a system that actually, works for, like, that benefits the most people, like at maximum capacity. And we just haven't done that. And we like, I think we're getting there, like kind of by like trial and error, but like you said, it's a very like slow process. That
Do
we
you
just
think
need
we'll
to,
ever? Do you think we'll ever get there?
um, I think we might, I don't know if it'll be like perfect, like a utopia type of thing, but I think like out of necessity, we would get a lot closer. I think we're getting to that point where, you know, like they say, there's the haves and the have-nots. I think we're getting to the point where the have-nots is just becoming such a big number that there's no other option but to like change something.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, to be honest, like, even though it might not seem like it, that change would be beneficial to both sides. Because if you don't, if you keep that status quo for so long, eventually something on the have not side is just going to crack. And like, there's going to be, like knee jerk reactions and like volatility. And I don't think people on the other side, the haves, want that, because that creates like revolution. And it could get pretty ugly if you ask me.
And don't you think it's already getting ugly? I mean, the rise of smash and grab is coming up, and that seems to be that's the weirdest thing. It's like it seems perfectly rational to do what they're doing, but at the same time, it's like, how can we change this? We're getting online, we're organizing, going into Nordstrom's and robbing them, with hundreds of people doing it at the same time. Isn't that a crack in the culture? Don't you think it's starting to show with the rise of gun violence and the rise of theft? And I think we're starting to show some weaknesses here
Yeah,
in
I
the
think that
system.
shows a lot of like people just like not caring.
Hmm.
Like I remember I was talking about this with like a few coworkers about like those smash and grabs that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And one of them was like a Louis Vuitton store. And one of our coworkers, or one of my coworkers, was like, "Oh, like poor Louis Vuitton." And I was like, "Poor Louis Vuitton." It's like, I'm sure they're gonna be okay. I feel bad for the employees, that were like probably like scared to death.
Yeah.
But
Poor Louis Vuitton. I
like the
know.
entities themselves,
I know
they'll
exactly who
survive
said
this
that
thing.
too. So
So it's just one of those things where you're right. Like there is signs of, and there are signs of it like showing already. And I think people are just like I don't give a fuck anymore. Like, what are you gonna do? Like,
Yeah,
and I think a lot of that stems from um, like the lack of like resources for people, you know, because I think a lot of that was happening like in the Bay Area
yeah.
where
That's
like
where it
cost of
started.
living is like, you know, sky high. So like what options do people have? You know, like you could be making 60, 80 grand a year and you're still fucking like homeless, you know?
I know. I
So
know. My
like
wife wanted to move there,
once
and I was like, no.
right, so once you get there and you like I'm sure those people are thinking, you know, like I make a decent amount of money, like why am I homeless? Like something clicks in their mind where it's just like I don't care, like it doesn't matter, like nothing I do is going to change it, so I'm just going to do whatever I want.
But that seems so. There are things we could do, to. I don't know, man. I don't know, because I'm stuck between these two worlds. I'm in the middle where I see both sides of the equation, and each each side has their right, you know. And how do you get them to come to the things? How do you get them to come to the middle and the things they agree on? Because I don't think billionaires want people to live in squalor. I don't think they do. I don't think they understand it because they have a different mindset than we do. It's just like Lalo. It's everybody who's in an extreme doesn't understand not extreme. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but people don't start off at extreme. You kind of have to work yourself there, you know.
Yeah, yeah. But do you remember when you were, 3 years old? No, it's too long ago, and too much has happened since then. So, do you remember when you were poor and people were like, "Nah," I vaguely remember it, but it was terrible, and and this is not terrible, and I don't want to go back to that, and I fear going back to that. So, anything I do has to be steered away from the thing that I don't like. So it just seems like we can't agree on anything anymore. Everybody's into this. I sent you. I watched that South Park thing last night, and without giving it away, because I know you haven't watched it yet. But everything in the future is like Target plus plus, Walmart plus, Denny's plus. Everything. Yeah, they had this thing, and I was laughing about it because everything in the future is plus. Yeah, because as we move forward and get away from our past, everything has to be better than the past. So these fucking people that make all the money, they don't, I don't think they want everyone to fail, but they don't want to be failures anymore in like plus. They want to be millionaire plus, billionaire plus. Everything has to be better. We're racing towards a cliff here. And smash and grab, that's just a symptom of what's going on, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's like you said, it's just I mean a lot of it to me is like greed, you know. I know a
Yeah,
lot of it's also like survival, but like you said, like that whole like millionaire plus plus, like everybody wants to achieve that, but a very like very 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 low percentage of people actually will.
yeah,
And I know we've talked about this before, where just like the ability of people to achieve that is enough for people to support a system where even though there's like a less than a 1% chance they actually will achieve that, they will back that system because they believe they can do it. And some of them will, but a vast majority of them won't. And that's what people don't realize, that they're advocating. It's like all the people that always like defend Elon Musk and then they're like barely able to put food on their table.
yeah,
It's like you're supporting this dude, but at the same time, like you are where you are because he is where he is, you know? And to me, that's just so like counterproductive, you know?
yeah. But even, I don't want to get off on Musk because, as you know, I'm a supporter of Mr. Musk.
Mr. Musk.
Mr. Musk, Elon. Um, I, I think that he is. I think he's just a byproduct of what's happening. I do. That it in the back in the turn of the century, 1900, the oil people, the Rockefellers, and the trains. They owned everything. There's always been the people in our culture who live extravagant lives. The Carnegies. They've always been. In the 60s, the Rockefellers and the Kennedys. We've always had this elite group of people among us, and I think that it's just now it's the future, man. It's plus. You got to be Rockefeller plus. You got to be Carnegie plus. So what's after Musk, I think, is complete and total failure. As it has to be, because
I mean,
it can't go on. There's not enough resources.
yeah, because I mean, we've always had people like that because we've always had a system or systems that have allowed like that type of like wealth like collection,
Hmm.
like whether it be capitalism or like even before that, like feudalism,
Yeah, the
like
king.
there's always been like that hierarchy where it's very few at the top and a lot at the bottom. And because I mean, there's not much difference between capitalism and feudalism besides you get paid, a little
Yeah.
bit instead of having to do it for free. Um,
It's pretty much if you're going in the hole, you're doing it for free. That's the way I look at it, man.
so it's one of those things where yeah, we've always had people like that, but it's because we've allowed them to exist. Um, when I mean, in all reality, we have the power to not allow them to exist, and that's not like a morbid like death type of thing, but like we have the ability to take the resources that we do have, which I mean, like you said, they're finite. They're not infinite,
Right.
but the ones we do have is more than enough to meet the needs for most, if not everybody here. We're just, I mean, in our reality, we're choosing not to do it because we
You know,
have the ability and we have the capability of like big change and like big reform.
yeah. What back in the day, man, it was oil and gas and how much land you owned, and you had the resources. You had actual resources. We're talking about Elon Musk doesn't have any resources per se. He has a car company and a space company, and he's invested heavily in Bitcoin and his own companies. So the thing is, he doesn't really own anything tangible. You know what I mean?
But he has a lot of influence and a lot of power. So I mean, if you were to think someone like on his like stature and his level was to like speak out against the system that put him up there,
Yeah.
I think that would do a lot, you know?
He has a
Um,
God complex. So I don't think he's
I
going
mean,
to.
most people in that position would. It's very hard to not have that when you're, the richest dude on the planet.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying it's very hard to find someone that would be able to say like, hey, look where I'm at, but I shouldn't be here, Like this shouldn't be a thing. Let's work on this to make sure, you know, more people live better than just, me being the richest man on earth.
Right.
And I
Don't
think
you
that
think that
takes a
he's,
lot out of someone.
don't you
And
think
that's
that
why it
Musk,
hasn't happened.
but don't you think Musk is doing that? in his own way. I mean, he's talking about. Here's the
I
thing.
think he's doing it for himself though. Like you said, he has that God complex. He has that like,
Right,
hey, I'm gonna be the one that changes the world. Instead of like, hey, let's change the world. He wants to be that face on the movement, you know?
right,
But he wants to be the face of the movement out of like his own ego. It's not like, hey, we appointed him, like, hey, let's follow this dude. He's a great leader, whatever.
right.
It's like, hey, I'm gonna be your guys' leader. And I think that kind of takes away from it a little bit. I don't know if you, I mean, if you get the same result, like that's great. But I don't think you usually do when you have that sort of person like leading the ship.
Why did Edison go after the light bulb? Why did he spend, and I know the story's anything from 1,000 to 10,000 fails and all that bullshit, but we have no idea unless he documented it. But why did he try to make a light? Because it was there, it was like, that's the idea. I think Musk is if you sit down and listen to this guy, and I mean really listen to him, don't read the blurbs that are coming across TikTok and all that nonsense. Sit down and watch some of his lectures, and he's talking about he said the other day it's been 13.8 billion years and the Earth's been here 4 billion years. And he talks about consciousness and how on this planet, conscious creatures came into being. And he said, across 13 billion years, how many consciousnesses have arisen within the universe and then been destroyed because they didn't escape the planet? Because this is a finite situation we're in here. And in order for consciousness to expand and survive, he said, we have to get off this planet. We have to get into space. Makes sense to me. Now, how he's going about it and what his reasoning is, that's irrelevant to me. His idea is to keep the human race, or not just humans, but conscious thought alive. And in order to do that, we have to get out of here. Makes perfect sense, man.
Yeah, but I don't think that's like a immediate like threat or active threat that we're facing to the point where like that should be priority number one. Like I just don't, like for me personally, I don't think that's like what we should focus on 100% on. Like I said, number one priority right now.
Right. I see your
Because
point.
I mean, I could see a scenario where like, okay, like we achieve like interplanetary like travel. What do you think is going to happen if like people are able to like really like live on other planets, and it's like it turns out like, hey, there's more like fucking land and resources over here. Who do you think is going to go over there?
Yeah, but the rich will leave. They'll leave the planet. They'll leave it to us.
Exactly. So do you see why like that's great and all, like don't get me wrong, like the idea and the concept is great, and yeah, I agree. Like that's like a valid point, but I don't think that's like anything we should be worried about today. Like there's not a fucking asteroid like that's gonna kill us in like 5 years that's on our way here.
Did
that
you
like,
ever
oh
see,
shit, we need to figure this out like before, doomsday.
well, how can you guarantee that tomorrow the asteroid that you're talking about isn't going to be found?
Yeah, but that's like a what if scenario, and it's like I could.
Well, your scenario of going to other planets and or going to interstellar, and the rich people just go out there, and that's also that's just a guess.
Well, no, that's a pretty like accurate thing to say, because I mean, one, it would cost a lot of money to do that.
Right.
So the people that would have the access and the availability to do that would be the super rich. They're not gonna just like transport a bunch of like average Joes to Mars or whatever.
Yeah, they will, because I don't think they're. It sounds dangerous. You think they'll survive? I don't know. Send Average Joe and see what happens. Hey, Average Joe's fine. Okay, let's go exploit him. That's what's going to happen, basically.
I think we should like figure out our own, like work on our own problems here
Yeah.
before trying to go somewhere else where those same problems are going to be created, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. And I think we can work on it simultaneously because we're not getting out of here in the next 100 years. We're not going to solve interstellar travel in the next 150 or 200 years, probably, unless they find a way to bend time, which they're working
I
on, I
mean,
guess.
the one thing I've seen or I've learned is that technology grows exponentially.
Exponentially. Yes, it does. Yes, it does, man.
So you never know.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we might be time traveling right now. Fuck, they don't know. But, you talk about, it's funny how we need to solve these problems. Okay, we've got, what's the number one problem right now? Climate change. But you can't even get anybody to agree that climate change is a real serious problem, depending on who's in office. And then you got world hunger, and you got running out of water and running out of land, and you got these humongous fucking problems, and we can't solve the smallest ones that we have.
I mean, I think a lot of our problems are pretty like interconnected.
Uh-huh.
So I think we're we like we could start like a chain reaction almost, type of thing.
Okay.
But like you said, like for you, you said the number one like issue we're facing is climate change. And I agree that's like a huge issue. But I think for me, I would put poverty at number one. Because I think once you start to address that issue, you're more prone to kind of get the ball rolling on other issues,
Yeah.
Because I mean, poverty, if you were able to solve that, you would solve a lot of other issues at the same time. If you
Okay.
solve poverty, you solve, your crime rate goes down. Your hunger, people aren't starving on the streets. And also, I mean, it's pretty natural to think once you have less people having to worry about, hey, what am I going to eat tonight? Like, am I going to eat at all? Like once people are able to have that moment where like everything like that's needed for like survival is taken care of, like you have your roof over your head, you have food, you have shelter, all that stuff.
Right.
Once you have all those like basic necessities, you can begin to like think, like that's when people are at their most like creative almost,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think the more like people we have that are, able to kind of think past survival, the better it is for us, because that's how you get, innovation. That's how you get advancement when people are able to think. So I mean, that would be the approach that I would take.
Well, don't you think though that let's look at what you said. I'll take it. You're going to solve poverty, and the first thing you said was all these things are interconnected, and then solving poverty would solve a lot of problems. But don't you think that solving poverty would cause a lot of issues also?
Like what?
Well, the first thing you're going to have to do to solve poverty is destroy capitalism. That's a given. You can't have the ultra rich anymore. If you distributed the wealth evenly, then
But that's the thing. That's why I don't like that term evenly, because it makes it seem like, oh shit, like everybody's gonna get paid the same, and
right.
it paints that picture that people try to paint of socialism about, everybody's going to be exactly the same. And there's like no individualism, you're all
Well,
going
you
to
got
live
to
in the same
even it
homes.
out because right now you've got mountain peaks of rich and death valleys of low. You're going to
Or,
have to
yeah.
kind of bring Death Valley up and bring the peak down.
Yeah. But I mean, even I would go as far as to say that we can solve, and I think pretty like to a far extent, poverty without like while still maintaining like capitalism. If that's like a thing people are like so strung on,
Right.
we just have to make it like human centered capitalism instead of money centered capitalism.
All right.
And I mean, we're able to do that now. We just don't like just take less profits, the people at the top and just, like actually trickle it down. Not whatever the fuck Reagan was talking about,
I
but
was going to say, I was getting ready to leap on you and say, what up, fucking Ronald Reagan? It's a trickle down effect. Yeah. Give the
that's why I
rich
said,
more. They'll
that's
throw
why I
it
said,
down.
that's why I said actually trickle it down. Um,
Actually.
but like, cause I mean, if that's like, if people are like so against like socialism, like we could still do that. At least here in the United States, while maintaining, our current economic system.
So
So
what's the answer here? The answer is to educate people about what you mean. But then again, we go right back to what I was talking about before is nobody can agree. Your ideas about socialism and my ideas about socialism, or I'm going to call it populism. That's, I think that if we had a populist government, it would work. It would begin the change. And by populism, I mean, what's the general consensus of the population who elected the people that are in office? If those people would do what their constituents really thought, but then again, Lalo, they do, because politicians from conservative areas like ours, McCarthy's doing exactly, and he's got our support. Not mine personally, but in this area, people support him. And he is a piece of shit. He's just a piece of shit. So does that make Kern County a piece of shit? I mean, you know what I mean?
yeah, but I think even that's like kind of like a false reality because yeah, he has support in Kern County, but if you ask every single person of Kern County if they support him, I think you would get a majority saying no. But it's like okay, so if
But he
the
doesn't
majority,
lose by slim margin, or he doesn't win by slim margins. He
right?
wins
But
by
but
big
why do you think
margins.
that is?
People don't vote here.
But why do you think people don't vote?
I think people don't vote for a myriad of reasons, but there are a lot. I don't know, man. I don't know. I've lived in areas where in in poor areas like Appalachia where I lived, people didn't vote because they didn't care. They were too disillusioned with the system to go, I I don't care. No matter what I say, my vote doesn't count. And that's what they believed.
See, my train of thought is people don't vote. Um, one because, like you said, they don't care enough to vote, or they don't have time to vote, or they just don't think about voting. Like that's not a
Yeah.
thing that they actively think about. So it's like, well, why is it like? Why do people have those mindsets? And to me, at least, it would be that people don't like they have too much on their plate to be worrying about that. Like that's not a priority for them because other things are that are those like basic needs that I was talking about.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned, when you give people like the ability to like to not worry about any of those things and just think, that's when people can become like proactive in their, governments and their local governments, and start to like care and have a reason to care, you know? Like, hey, like all this stuff, like all my basic necessities are taken care of. Now, like, how do we improve things from here, you know?
Yeah.
And that's when you get to start, like, that's when you start to care about what your politicians say, you know?
But isn't that the conundrum that I was talking about before, where critical thinking would, I can sit back and I can say, okay, you don't change because you don't have time to change, but all you have to do is vote. So that's critical thinking. You can't change the system until you change the system, and you're not changing the
Right.
system because you're not changing it. And that's your fucking reasons, which don't make any sense. You have the opportunity, you know you have the opportunity, and yet it's almost in, you know, like I said, I'm going to say something inflammatory here, and I might be completely and totally fucking wrong, thoroughly wrong, but you don't care. You say you care, but you don't. Because if you did truly care about something, if you did truly think that you could do something or something needs to be done, you would just fucking do it. And you don't want to. You want to lay there in your fucking misery. And I know that sounds like very privileged of me, but even when I made $12,000 a year and had 2 kids, I fucking voted. I looked at the issues and I voted. That's even before I went to college. So you can't say the system needs to change and every November you just say the system can't change because it's always been this way and my vote doesn't count. Then you're a defeatist.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't, like, I wouldn't blame people for thinking that way based on like our history, you know?
Right.
So I think, like, yeah, I get what you're saying. But I don't even think we need, like, for me, the change doesn't have to be like a flip of a switch. To me, it's more like a snowball effect, you know? Like, we just have to get enough people. Like, if you get enough people to, I think this last election, McCarthy won by like 10,000 votes. Like, that's a very, I mean, compared to like the Kern County population,
Yeah.
that's like a pretty small percentage. We have like almost 500,000 people or more than 500,000 people in Kern County.
And how many of them vote? In the 40s?
Right. So, I mean, like I said, we don't even need like, we just need like enough people, you know,
Right.
to kind of get the ball rolling, to see that like initial change. And I think that would be, I mean, for a lot of people, that would be enough to like, oh, look, hey, like our votes do matter, you know, and maybe in the next election, you'll get even more people to vote, and, you know, and the next one more and more. So I think we just have to get like enough, you know, just enough to kind of get it rolling. Like, we have to get just enough people in Congress to like pass this big, like, you know, infrastructure bill or whatever it may be.
Right.
And I think once people start to see like that progress, it's going to like perk their ears up and be like, oh shit, like maybe this whole fucking democracy shit like does work, you know? But I think whatever that like threshold is, for whatever like scenario, you know, it might be different for different things. But I think we just need to, like, even if we just barely get enough, I think it's a good starting point, you know?
Well, more people voted in the last presidential election than ever, and Biden just did edge him out, you know? So are we really that divided as a nation, or is the other half of the people not voting, are they all Biden supporters? Or that's what I'm saying. You know, even if you continue to get more and more people to vote, it seems like, it appears that we're more divided than ever.
Yeah. I mean, I agree that we're more divided than ever, but I think a lot of that divide comes from like false pretenses or like just false ideas,
Yeah.
where if we were able to show people like how things actually work and why things are the way that they actually are, I think a
I,
lot of that divide would go
again,
away.
critical thinking. And how do you teach people to think critically when they never have before? Isn't that seems really odd? Some people can't, everybody's good at something. And I think that a lot of people are just not thinking this through, man. I mean, they just have this, they either have a radical idea. Isn't that, look at the fucking thing that we come right back to what we talked about in the beginning of the podcast. It's extremes. You're either like it, I don't fucking care, or I care so much I would elect anybody like Donald Trump. And that middle section, it's like, so half the population votes. So we got 25% who are these extremists, you know, 25% that are so fucking far bent left, and the 50% of the population in the middle who doesn't give a fuck, and they just point at the extremists or point at the right and point at the left, and they just blame, but they don't act. We need to teach that middle 50%, instead of just blaming, sit down, look at the fucking issues, think this shit through. But dude, I don't have any hope for us. And I'm not being a defeatist or being down. I'm just looking at the situation and saying, if you turned off the fucking news, you know, if you turned off Fox and you turned off OAN, people would begin to think and gave them the truth instead of this fucking bent news. What do you think, man? I mean, really, you really have hope for a situation that we're in now?
Yeah, I think because like you were talking about that critical thinking, like aspect of it,
Yeah,
and I think a lot of that comes from like our education, and I think we're going to become a more educated population, and with that, I mean, it's not a coincidence that like people with like higher education tend to lean more left because, like you said, they're able to think critically,
right.
and they don't see things for face value. They see like, okay, well, what's causing this? Why is this happening? And I think once you get to that point, you'll be able to see what's causing it and then change and fix the things that are causing them.
Well, it
So I
certainly
think,
happened to me. So,
yeah, so I believe as we become a more educated country, we're on our way to like fix those issues that we face.
not everybody who gets educated leans left, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like it's the majority of them.
Yeah,
Like most people with a higher education tend to lean left. Like it's a pretty like dominant. I don't know, like comparison.
yeah. But like I said, I entered into college when I was 29. I was conservative Christian. I believe that whole nonsense about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and welfare was wrong, and I completely was there, man. And by the time I entered into my second stint of college, when I was in my mid 30s, I started to see none of that was working. I started to think my way out of it, and then I had to leave West Virginia, and I had to get away from the culture that I was in. So maybe we should legislate that everyone at the age of 18 has to switch sides. Everybody in Appalachia who's the age of 18 has to move out, and everybody in New York who's the age of 18 has to move into Appalachia.
I don't know about all that.
And you have to vote, conscription. Let's do what the Israelis do. You have to vote. You have to fucking go in the military. Everything's controlled. We're gonna lose our freedom again. You're gonna legislate our freedom away from us, aren't you, Lalo?
Only if it's detrimental.
All right, dude. I gotta take off because I gotta go do that podcast thing. So to make us famous.
To make us famous.
Yeah,
I like that.
Well, everybody can get famous. I dropped out of school again, so
You're sounding very Elon Musky.
hey, if you listen to Elon, he makes sense, and I think.
I do. That's why I think the way I do about him.
Well,
that's why I think he's an idiot.
Well, you should come to my house, and you can watch him in front of the shrine that I built by the television. We'll get into Elon Musk one of these days, and guns, and Facebook, and all the other shit. But we should call this podcast like Thoroughly Socialist.
No, I don't think that's a good idea if you're trying to like recruit viewership.
No, I talk about it.
That's how you get people in like. That's how you get like echo chambers.
Yeah, I don't need those people. But I always talk about us like the multi-generational angle, and I always, when I'm asked about Thoroughly Wrong, I always emphasize the name. Listen, we have discussions, we have ideas, sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree, but all in all, the underlying situation of this whole podcast is this is a communicative between two people, and between two people and an audience, and we might be wrong. And I have no bones about it when I say I might be wrong. I don't know. But the thing is, I'm open to interpretation. I listen to Elon Musk. I listen to the left. Like you taught me a lot of things in the last couple years. I'm listening to everybody now because everybody has something to say. And there's a kernel of truth in every single person. What they spout, what they believe, how they think. There's a kernel of truth in that. And you might have to hold that truth up to their reality, but it's still true to them. And we need to know why it's true to you. And if it's detrimental to culture, if your truth is detrimental to culture, like I want to blow up a judge or some shit like that, yeah, that's the truth of what you want to do. That's detrimental. We need to find out how you got there and get you back. And more importantly, don't let others be led to that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we might be wrong here, just as wrong as anybody else, but we're trying, right?
That's all we can do.
All right, man. So I'll see you next time. Maybe we'll get back to talking about the Second Amendment after, I'll get this shotgun fired today and I'll get all excited again.
I think we should start off with that next time so we don't like go off topic.
Okay.
Because I always feel like you say, you try to like transition into the topic.
Yeah.
But it's kind of hard sometimes, so might as well just start with it.
All right. So next time is Second Amendment and Zuckerberg. If those guys, if you take that thought a little further, I threaten no one. I'm not a Republican on Twitter. Okay. All right, buddy. That's been good. I'll see you next week.
Sounds good.
All right, man. Listen, this has been the Thoroughly Wrong Project. And like I said, we might be thoroughly wrong, but at least we're out there trying, man. So this has been Bob
and Lalo.
And we're out of here, dude. I'll see you next week.
Later, man.
Later. You have now experienced the Thoroughly Wrong Project with your podcast hosts, Lalo and Bob. We can now be found on Pandora Radio, Apple Podcasts, Podium Podcast, or by searching The Thoroughly Wrong Project to locate our YouTube channel. You can contact us directly by email at thoroughly-wrong@gmail.com or just leave a comment on any of our platforms. Until next time, thanks for spending your valuable time with us, and remember, Always speak up and never be afraid to be thoroughly wrong.